Hello, my name is Jamie Lenhart, and welcome back to A Table for One. I have just a few things I want to throw out there at you before we go too far. The first one is, if you have not subscribed yet to our YouTube channel for Springfield Faith Center, please click the link below so you'll be notified every time a new video comes up. I have a few items I want to make sure that get on your calendar or your awareness. First one is Sunday nights. We have our communion time from 4 to 5. That is a time that you can come. It's family friendly. You do have to wear masks. That you can come, have a time of communion, maybe be prayed for or pray with someone, and just get to say hi, get to see one another just a little bit. So that's happening each Sunday afternoon, evening from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock. On Wednesday nights, we have two things that happen. The first one is our City Youth, middle school and high school youth group. They meet here at the church in the sanctuary for a time of worship, the word, some activities, being social distant, but at the same time wearing masks, but get a time of spiritual development. And that is at 6:30 here at the church. At 7 o'clock online is the home groups online. That is over Zoom. Matt Weimer facilitates it. And it's a space, so if you're not already part of a home group that you meet with somebody outside of the church building, that it is a time where you can connect digitally. They'll go over some questions around the sermon each week and just have a connection time. So that's something for you to check out at 7 to 8 o'clock Wednesday on Wednesdays. Now, obviously, there is a Table for One, which is right here, and we are so glad that you have been watching and that many of you have been getting good value out of this. And so each week we roll out a new one on Thursdays, and you can watch that on YouTube or Facebook. And then last of all, tomorrow, from the time of this video is being released, on 10/30, October 30th, we are doing a trunk or treat down here at the church. And what this is since we can't do our kind of traditional harvest party, we are going to have some people that have already volunteered. They've decorated their cars. They're going to be down here with bags of candy and some PVC chutes to send that candy down to kids. And you can bring your kids costumed up for Halloween, and they will walk that circuit and just receive candy. People will fawn over their great costumes, and it'll just kind of be a fun time to see one another. So that is happening this Friday on the 30th from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock. Last of all, I want to call to everybody's attention. This is Daylight Savings Weekend. So that means when the live stream goes live, it's going to be an hour different than what it has been. It's going to be technically the same time, but you get an extra hour of sleep. So for all of you who can enjoy that hour of sleep, for all of you like me that have young children, I'm sorry, just drink an extra cup of coffee because they're still going to wake you up at that early time. So again, it's going to be an hour different than if you haven't reset your clocks. So be aware of that. Set your clocks back, and we will see you at the live service or live streaming service. That is what I have as far as all of that. So this week, we're going to jump straight to our table talk, because this week I get to sit down with Sally Miller, one of our people in our church that she has been in China for the last several years, and it was a great conversation we got to have. So I hope you enjoy our table talk this week with Sally Miller. Sally, thank you for being with us this week.
You're welcome.
So a lot of people may not know you because obviously you haven't been around a lot because you have been out of the country. So now you have family here within the church, though.
Yes.
So you went away starting when?
It was 2001.
2001. Okay.
19 years.
What was it? So was it pre September 11th?
Yes, but just by maybe 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And so I had just arrived and just started my job. And a friend called in the middle of the night and said, "This just happened." And
Oh,
it wasn't,
wow.
it was so unreal that when I got up the next morning, it's like, did I dream all that? And I turned on my computer and watched all the footage, and it's like, oh my goodness.
Oh, that's crazy. I didn't know that.
So even now, 2000 September 11th is very set in everyone's mind. But to me, it still has a little bit of surrealness to it
Oh, yeah.
because
Although that'd be weird. Yeah, no, because I remember because I had just stopped working here at the church just before that. I had been working with Daniel and doing the youth, and so yeah. Okay, so then you, what took you to China? What brought you to that? I mean, that's a big that's a big move. That's not like, oh, I think I'm going to move up to Portland or Seattle. That's like, no, I'm going to move to the other side of the world. Like,
I had always wanted to do overseas work.
Okay.
But I didn't feel like I was very good at expressing my belief to other people. And so what I could do to support people who were on the field is I could work at an international school. I could work with their kids. And I was teaching in Springfield before I went to China. I'm in the public school system. And so I had been thinking about, should I pursue this or not? Is it time to make the break from public school back to overseas? And I went to visit Sue and Randy, who were already there.
Yeah.
And in the city where Sue lived, there was an international school, and I was able to talk with them and came home, prayed about it. Is this the time, and is this what I'm supposed to do? And it's like, well, I'll just ask them if they need a teacher. What I didn't know at the time, that I found out later, is they always need a teacher. Or not, most international schools almost always need a teacher. But they needed a teacher. Middle school, I was a middle school teacher before I went. So it just fit. And so I went for a year, just a year.
And the rest is history.
And it became many years.
Yeah, no, you've been, because I mean, we're in 2020 now, and you just moved back.
Just moved back.
And obviously, you came back isn't it every year you had to come back for a certain amount of time?
No,
type of thing,
I usually came home just to visit,
Oh, okay.
usually once or twice a year. After the first year at the international school, I realized that I didn't know any local people. And so I switched to teaching Chinese university students.
Oh, okay.
So I worked for universities. And they're on a semester system there. So there's spring semester and fall semester with 2 rather longish breaks during the summer and the winter. And so I would either come home summer or winter, depending on what was happening with family, sometimes both. But usually summer. I mean, Oregon's nicer in the summer than it is in January.
What? No.
July, January, you choose. Tough choice.
So you taught over there. One thing that for me is interesting is, I think the idea of going to another country is fascinating. It's also daunting. Because there are the cultural differences, but also outside of just, obviously like food's different and society is different, but also there's the fact of you went to a country that can at times be hostile to your faith system, or if not hostile, maybe standoffish and resistant to it. So it's like it's not something where it's just like. It's not like you can just go there and be like, I'm going to go find a church to be a part of, like you would like stateside. It's like you have to be able to go and have be able to live your faith in a different way.
Yeah.
How was that for you, that transition and in doing that there?
It was a learning curve. It was a real learning curve, and getting out of the mindset that you have to say something to share your faith. That really, especially in that culture, people watch. They watch your actions, they watch what you do. And that, when I started to realize that, it's like, I can do this without blatantly saying anything.
Yeah.
And, students have a lot of questions, especially university students. They have a lot of questions, and I can share from my own personal experience if they ask me a question. And that was always delightful. Very delightful. In the latter years, what I realized is, there's a lot of truth in the Bible. There's a lot of truth in what Jesus said. And I don't have to say, well, Jesus says.
Yeah, no.
I can say, well, a good teacher once said, or I've read this in a special book. And I can share those words without making them in your face, confrontational, religious.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. No, it's something I've actually been learning in my own life a little bit of, because I've found it funny that you're seeing some more kind of social scientists or like people in mental health kind of side of things. They're starting to see some things around, even like Brene Brown's one that my wife loves. But some of the things that she's studied,
right.
I'm going, this lines up with the biblical truths that we already knew. It's just we didn't have like the scientific data to back up what we're saying. But now they're finding that, and it's interesting because what you're saying is that truth is truth.
Truth is truth.
And
there is one who is truth.
Yeah, and so you can share that truth by how you live and those things where it's just like, this is how to be a good person.
Right. I think what really helped me, or what started making the shift for me, is I had a student from a Muslim background, and there were some university students from the U.S. in my city at that time, and they were very active in sharing with people, and they really were focused on some of the minority groups that had very strong religious systems, and he just really felt offended that they were trying to convert him. Okay. And I got to thinking, I wouldn't like that either if somebody tried to convert me from what I believe. How would I feel? I really would back off.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah.
And so it's like, that's not the way. That doesn't encourage, that doesn't draw people.
No, well, that's an interesting thing to think about, that sometimes our model in the West, and I'd say it probably goes all the way back really to Charlemagne with the whole like really pushing the Roman Catholic belief system throughout Europe, but this idea that, the proselytizing of like, you have to tell people and bring them in, compared to, that's not what
Jesus did.
No, he shared the truth, and people came to him when they realized what it was.
It's all about relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I remember growing up in the church, growing up through youth group, and it's like that thing of like, bring friends, and it's like, it's not a bad thing, but at the same time there was like this tension, because it's like, it feels weird.
And if I don't bring a friend,
am I a worse Christian?
Right.
And but that's not it. It's share life.
Share life.
Wow. So now, you've built some very strong relationships and friendships there, and
definitely.
And what was kind of what was your process there, or was it challenging? What was your learning curve of kind of starting to build those relationships across, cultural lines that could be very different at times?
Ask lots of questions and be willing to look like a complete idiot. Make a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
But especially in Asian cultures, it takes time. Americans tend to be really shallow friendly up front, and they're not.
We created Facebook, what can I say?
I know. But they really, it takes time. It takes time, it takes doing things together. It's not quick.
Yeah.
And so you really have to be there for time and be part of their life for time. And they slowly realize, I can trust you. And part of there are drawbacks and there's a beauty to being a foreigner. As a foreigner, I'm a safe person to talk to because I'm not in the system.
That makes sense.
And I won't go tell somebody else what you just told me. And so as colleagues and students begin to trust you, they realize, I can unload. I can talk to somebody about this and air what I think, and it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And so over time, those relationships develop, and not with everyone, of course, but there are special people that you have relationship with over time, and it's beautiful.
Well, that's interesting because for us, culture like good or bad, we're like I can say whatever I want, and it's like which gets people in trouble, and can get people can obviously take it too far.
Right.
But we're just used to that. We can say that.
Right.
That as long as that person is, we know we're not stepping on any major toes. We can basically just say whatever we want, and that's not something that's necessarily over there. They have to be careful about what they say.
It's not part of every culture. No.
No.
It's unique to our American culture.
And so that's that's interesting of just being in that spot of being able to say you can that they could share.
Yes, and that it was good because it also let me see different aspects and sides of the culture that I can't access. I can't read Chinese. I can read a little bit, but usually the characters I can't read are the ones that are really the depth of the conversation. I mean, I can't read the characters that are the most important ones. I don't know those words. And so it would also help me understand, what's going on in the news.
Yeah.
I can't understand the news. And so maybe sometimes that's a good thing.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
So.
Now, what area were you in?
I lived actually in two different areas. I first lived in the Northwest, and I lived there for maybe 7-8 years. And then I was home for a year and a half, and then when I went back to the Southwest.
Okay.
And I was there for 9 years.
Now, would you say it was even culturally different between those two areas?
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Because obviously on the outside we're just like, hey, it's China. It's like no, it's to me it's like, well, yeah, right now you're in Oregon. Go to Georgia. Very different.
Very different. Very, very different. So the area where I first lived had Muslims and Tibetans, so Tibetan Buddhism and Buddhism. And people were very distinct in their ethnic groups. That part of China also is very much flour food-based part of China. So they eat a lot of dumplings, a lot of bread, a lot of noodles.
Wonderful things all in my book.
Well, unless you're gluten-free, and then that's not
okay, then maybe not there.
Not so easy. In the Southwest, it's all rice. I mean, so in the Northwest, I had students, if they didn't have a bowl of noodles for at least one meal throughout the day, they felt like they hadn't eaten. In the Southwest, if you haven't had rice for at least one, if not 3 meals during the day, you have not eaten. And so
that's interesting.
It's totally different. Where I lived in the Northwest was like Central Oregon, high, dry, high plateau desert. Southwest, it's rain. So it's the part of China that we think of in the West with those misty, humpy little mountains and rivers and lots of rain. Yeah, it was damp, clothes molded, everything molded. So it's just, it's incredibly diverse. The province that I last lived in had the second highest number of minority groups in all of the country. Oh. And so there were like maybe 24, 25 different distinct minority groups. The difference is they all dress not, in the cities they don't dress in their ethnic clothes anymore, and so you can't tell. Where in the Northwest, people still very much have their ethnic clothes that they wear. And so it was really different.
Interesting.
Also, not just food, but height and dialect.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I'm 5'6", 5'6.5". So for an American woman, I'm just average, more or less. I remember riding a bus in the city that I last lived in, and I was standing, I didn't have a seat, I was standing up, and I thought, I can look over the top of every single person's head on this bus because they're just as shorter, and it's like, I feel like an Amazon. Not only do I stand out as a foreigner, I am a head taller than everybody.
That's great.
It was really weird. The dialect was very different. They don't speak standard Chinese in the Southwest. Okay. At least in my province, they don't. And their local dialect is very similar to the Putonghua, which is a standard dialect. And so they really think they're speaking the standard, they really think they're speaking Putonghua when they're not. And so I would say something and they just look at me and it's like, okay, I'm done here. I don't know how else to proceed. I don't know the local dialect. And I made a point of not really learning the local dialect because if I went outside of the province, it just made me look like,
Yeah.
your Chinese is really bad. But in the province, I had to learn at least some of the key words that they substituted, so I could kind of follow. Okay, that's what they mean.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a trip. Let me tell you.
No, I find it fascinating. Just absolutely fascinating. And I've never been to China. My mom and my aunt Anna got to, and they
had a great time.
They had a great time getting to experience something very different than they'd ever experienced. What, as a completely frivolous question, what food will you miss the most being back stateside?
Oh, I already miss some Chinese food. Some of the dishes in the Southwest where I just came from, the food is incredibly spicy.
Ooh.
And so I had to learn over time to eat really spicy things. And I don't necessarily miss the really spicy, but they also used a lot of sour. And so they made their own, what's that called? Like, not sauerkraut, but similar to that. It's like processed cabbage, kind So I miss that. It was really good. Some of the local tofu dishes I really miss, and eggplant. And they made a hot pot that was a sour tomato sort of base with, you could have different things in it, but their version of like a smoked bacon or ham. Oh, so good. They made one hot pot that was, it was beans, kind of like your mom's homemade bean soup kind of thing with a thicker broth and the ham and the beans, and you put in vegetables and just sit around a table and all eat out of the hot pot and chat, and I miss that.
Yeah, I don't know if we have any hot pot places
You
down
know,
here. There's a few up in Portland, but I
maybe,
don't know of any down here. It's just it's a different thing.
It's a different thing. Trying to find real Chinese food here, I feel like
difficult.
If I just think of it as it's not Chinese food, it's better.
There is a place over Willamette in
Oh.
Eugene. I think it's called Kung Fu Bistro.
Okay.
My wife heard about it from someone, and we went and tried it, and it was a lot of exchange students there. And it's like, and I look at it, I'm like, I'm seeing exchange students. I think this is authentic.
It's good enough anyway.
Yeah. So it was very different stuff than what you would normally see in American Chinese food.
Yes.
So it was like, and it was phenomenal.
Oh,
so good. So you might
yes.
want to check that one out.
I might need to.
So now that you're back, obviously you're in a big life transition.
Yeah.
What's God been doing in you since returning? I mean, obviously you had to quarantine for a while, and
My third quarantine in 6 months.
Oh gosh. Like what? Has he been doing anything in you right now, or has it kind of just been a waiting period?
Oh, yes. This is what my students do all the time. They don't get the or means you have to choose one. It's just yes or
Yes.
no.
Yeah.
So
I get it.
yes, it is kind of a waiting thing. The China chapter is closed. I don't know what's next. If I go back into education, what's that look like now? It's just, America is such a weird place to be right now.
Yeah.
Finding a teaching job, I'm not even sure, do schools even need teachers right now? I mean, it's just, it's just in such a transition. I mean, I'm in a transition, but what I'm going into is also in a transition. And so it's kind of unsettling. I just don't know.
Yeah.
One of the things in the last 6 months of weird that has been my life, God just really impressed upon me, live today. And so I've been trying to continue with that because things are just so uncertain. Live today. What does God want me to do today? Who am I supposed to love today? How, if the two greatest commandments are love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind and all your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself, that doesn't just drop on you.
No.
That's a today, how are you going to love God? Today, how are you going to love other people? Do that today.
Yeah.
And so I've been trying to stay in that mindset. It's not been easy because there's been a lot of stress in my life the last, I'd say, 6 months, but 2 years really, with team stuff and China stuff. And so just trying to kind of decompress all that. And I just got back from a three-week trip to Michigan to a renewal retreat for returned field workers.
Okay.
And it was incredibly intense because they try to help you unpack all of that emotional baggage that you're carrying around. So it was 3 very intense weeks, but they were really good because every session came with handouts. It came with stuff you can start to implement into your life.
Oh, that's great.
To get a little more balance. And so it'll be a process. I still don't know what's going on. I mean, I even have to I asked my sister, okay, so this store, what's the deal? What can I do? And she'll say, I'm not quite sure because it used to be this, but I don't know what the new situation is. And so I feel like I'm not quite so a duck out of water because most people, or a lot of people, aren't quite sure right now. And that helps actually with the transition.
Okay.
So it's not just me who doesn't know. A lot of us don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think what you said, what you felt God spoke to you of saying, be in the present, be in the now. I think that's something that a lot of us could really accept right now, where we may be pining for what was or looking forward to what's going to be. I am one of those people. I like to constantly be advancing forward, and I can forget that right now is the time that God has us. And so right now is when we need to engage and sometimes lean into the awkward transition times and be okay with that He's taking us through something.
Exactly. I spent 2 months in Thailand during the worst of the virus in China, basically as a refugee. I couldn't go back to China. All the borders were starting to close in the Southeast Asia countries. I couldn't really fly out back to the U.S. I knew if I did try to get out to the U.S., I really couldn't get back to China. And I needed to for closure. And every day, something in that dynamic changed. I mean, it was just unreal how much it changed. It's like, okay, I can't actually figure out the future because in an hour it's going to be different. And so you really do just have to, it's stressful. But you really do just have to learn to hang into that moment because...
So true. Well, Sally, thank you so much for sitting down with me. I know we've never actually talked before, and this was actually really fun. So thank you very much for sharing with us, and I'm sure people are going to enjoy our conversation.
I hope so.
I'll be honest, I really enjoyed getting to chat with Sally. I've never really gotten to talk with her very much. And so this was a great time for me to even get to know her and know what she's been doing for almost the last, almost 20 years. So that was an amazing conversation for me, and I hope you enjoyed it. Now, for us, as we get ready to go, I actually want to do our meditative moment as we go. And what I wanted to meditate on is what Sally said of what she feels God has been talking to her about, which is just be present in the moment. That in times like now, with all the weirdness, we can feel like we pine for the future or the past. Whereas God is in our present, He is doing amazing things, and let's be there in it. Not complaining, not being sorry for ourselves, but really leaning into what God is doing in this time. So let's just take 30 seconds saying, God, where are you in the now in my life? Let's take 30 seconds. Well, everybody, thank you for being with us this week on A Table for One. We will be back next week with a new episode, so have a wonderful week and be blessed.